In order to successfully enter a key university, I killed my best friend. Just because I have an unknown superpower. Every time I kill someone, I can inherit all the knowledge in the other person's mind. The first time I realized that I had this superpower was during the summer vacation when I was 10 years old. My mother was too busy with work to take care of me, so she sent me to my grandma's house in the countryside to stay temporarily. The thing I hated most when I was a child was being sent to my grandma's house. The countryside was poor and broken, and it was not fun at all. And every night just after 8 o'clock, my grandma was ready to go to bed, so I often quarreled with my grandma. Several times, my grandma's wrinkled old face was swollen into purple by my anger, making her look like she was about to faint. My mother used to teach me not to make my grandma angry, because my grandma had a bad heart and often carried a small medicine bottle with her for first aid, so I naturally knew about this. Later, when I quarreled with my grandma again, I cursed her with malice, "Old witch, why don't you die?" My grandma widened her eyes in shock when she heard this, and looked at me as if she had seen a monster. You. She was so angry at my words that she trembled all over, and she hesitated for a long time without being able to say a complete sentence. Then I saw Grandma's eyes suddenly widen, she arched her body in pain, raised her dry right hand to press her heart, and fell to the ground. Grandma raised her hand with difficulty and reached into her pocket. I took the lead and took out Grandma's small medicine bottle from her pocket. I held the small medicine bottle in my hand, stepped back quickly, and looked at Grandma on the ground expressionlessly. Grandma's lips turned purple, and a trace of surprise first appeared in her deep eye sockets. After a few seconds, that trace of surprise was mixed with incredible fear. Grandma seemed to realize what I wanted to do, and the instinct for survival drove her to get up from the ground. But the harder Grandma struggled, the more she panted. After a period of time that seemed extremely long to me, Grandma's movements froze in an instant. She lay on the ground, her arms stretched straight toward me. Like a frozen ice sculpture, her body gradually became cold and motionless. The dim room fell into deathly silence. I walked with stiff legs to the landline and dialed the emergency number. While waiting for the ambulance to arrive, I walked to a cabinet full of various medicine bottles, spread my sweaty palms, and put the small medicine bottles in my hand on the cabinet. Then I swung my arms violently, and the small medicine bottles fell to the ground with crackling sounds. When the shrill whistle sounded from outside the house, I suddenly collapsed to the ground, pretending to be panicked and burst into tears. The medical staff confirmed my grandmother's death on the spot. After my mother rushed to the hospital, she kept comforting me who was crying bitterly. She didn't blame me. When my grandmother had a seizure, she didn't find the emergency medicine on the cabinet in time. Everyone thought it was just a tragic accident. After my grandmother's funeral, I realized that things were starting to go wrong. I suddenly found that I had mastered some skills that I had never touched before. For example, cooking and sewing clothes, and even some knowledge about how to farm. But I didn't have any relevant memories, and that knowledge just appeared in my brain out of thin air. Until one day later, I tasted the potato shreds I fried myself, and the taste was exactly the same as my grandma's. At that time, I suddenly realized that all the extra knowledge in my brain came from my grandma. It was at that moment that an extremely crazy and unreasonable guess emerged. For a long time, I kept this guess in my heart and never told anyone. However, this guess was like a seed, sprouting silently. My grades were not good in junior high school, and it was difficult to even get into an ordinary high school. It happened that a girl in our class who was an excellent student lived in the same community as me. We often rode to and from school together. To be honest, I envied her very much. With her academic performance, it was easy for her to get into the key high school in our city. One day on the eve of the high school entrance examination, I sneaked into the carport during the break and somehow broke the brakes of that girl. It is difficult for me to describe the reason for this behavior. I don't think I really want to kill her. I just want to take this opportunity to verify the guess that has been lingering in my heart for a long time. On the way home, I don't know if my luck is too good or the girl's luck is too bad. When we passed an intersection, we happened to encounter a large truck running a red light. The girl didn't brake and was hit directly in front of me and died on the spot. The driver of the large truck was driving fatigued. He hadn't slept for almost 2 days when the accident happened. In short, this is a complete tragedy and has nothing to do with me. Later, I sat in the examination room for the high school entrance examination. The questions that were as difficult to understand as the heavenly book in the past became extremely simple overnight. After the results of the high school entrance examination came out, I ranked 10th in the grade and successfully entered the key high school that I had been dreaming of. Everyone thought that I was doing exceptionally well and envied my good luck. I just smiled and never refuted. They were right, I was indeed lucky. Half a month before the college entrance examination, most of the students in the class were preparing for the exam, only I was different. I sat in the classroom every day, staring at the textbook, and the question that I thought about most in my mind was how to kill Chen-rong without leaving any trace. In the eyes of others, I am Chen-rong's best friend. During the 3 years of high school, the two of us were almost inseparable on campus, and we didn't forget to call each other even when we went to the bathroom. Chen-rong has excellent grades, sweet looks, and a cheerful personality. He is a typical good student in the eyes of teachers and parents. But I have average grades, ordinary looks, and a bit introverted personality. In short, Chen-rong and I are two completely different types of people. The reason why Chen-rong chose to be friends with me is precisely because I am too ordinary. It is my ordinariness that can highlight her excellence. I have known for a long time that Chen-rong often speaks ill of me behind my back. She said that I am not very smart, look stupid, and always have an unpleasant smell of medicine on me. If she hadn't felt sorry for me, she would have broken up with me long ago. Chen-rong is right, my family is quite pitiful. My father died when I was very young, and my mother raised me up alone with great difficulty over the years. In the end, she became ill due to overwork and could only rely on long-term medication to regulate her body. But it doesn't matter, I don't care about Chen-rong's opinion of me at all. After all, I don't really want to be friends with her. The first time I noticed Chen-rong was in the first-year high school entrance examination. She scored first in the grade. From then on, I quietly put her on my reserve list. Of course, I was also worried that Chen-rong's academic performance would decline in the next 3 years. Although my reserve list is updated every semester, it would still be very troublesome to change the candidates at will in the middle. Fortunately, Chen-rong's academic performance has always been very stable. Until the last mock exam before the college entrance examination, she had never fallen out of the top 5 in her grade. And she had no intention of taking the competition as a recommendation. It can be said that Chen-rong was the perfect candidate. Whether I could reverse my undergraduate studies and get into a key university depended entirely on her. In fact, it was not that I had not tried to study hard, but it was really difficult to excel in my studies. Even with the foundation laid by that junior high school girl, I could only barely hold on for half a semester. Since the second half of the second semester of my first year in high school, my grades have plummeted. Perhaps some people are not born to be suitable for studying. Anyway, I think that I am not the material for studying, and it is easier to think about how to kill others. I used my spare time in the 3 years of high school to cram all kinds of suspense and mystery novels, and watched a lot of documentaries related to homicides. I found that the police's detection methods were too powerful. Not only were they thinking in a tight way, but they also had many high-tech methods, which could almost make criminals know where to hide. I conceived several plans to kill Chen-rong in my mind, but I felt that they were not ideal and had too many loopholes. Once the police determined that the case was a homicide, they would bite it to the death and keep investigating. So I had to work hard to make Chen-rong's death look like an accident. After some deep thinking, I roughly outlined a plan. Although Chen-rong looked like a good student on the surface, she would actually do some outrageous things in pursuit of excitement. For example, she would date a gangster boyfriend outside the school, or smoke secretly in the toilet. So I decided to take advantage of this and let Chen-rong go to her own death. 2 days before leaving school, I kept knocking on Chen-rong's ear, suggesting that we should indulge ourselves the night before leaving school. I deliberately asked her if she dared to sneak to the rooftop of the teaching building to drink during the evening self-study. At first, Chenrong was a little hesitant, and she asked me how to bring alcohol into the school. I said, "You are stupid, why not let your day friends bring it in?" Chenrong was speechless now. I didn't continue to persuade her, but just said, "If you don't dare, forget it, I'll go by myself later. I don't want to leave regrets in my high school life." Who said I didn't dare? I was just thinking about what kind of wine to buy. Sure enough, Chenrong took the bait. I continued to bait and said, "Then why don't you buy a few cans of beer?" Chenrong glanced at me with contempt, and said arrogantly, "That's so boring, I'll ask my friends to bring a few bottles of whiskey for you to taste later." I resisted the urge to laugh out loud, pretended to be very envious, and kept praising her for being so amazing. On the night before leaving school, Chenrong really brought 2 bottles of whiskey. But when we were about to go upstairs to the rooftop, I deliberately grabbed Chenrong at the stairs and said weakly, "Why don't we just forget it? What if we are caught by the director?" Chenrong grabbed my wrist abruptly. "It's already this time, what are you afraid of? Even if you get caught, it's okay, at most, you'll just curse a few times. We are about to take the college entrance examination, we should consider our mood. Come up with me." I resisted symbolically twice and glanced at the surveillance camera at the staircase when I went upstairs. The rooftop door was only wrapped with an iron chain, not really locked. I deliberately followed Chenrong and waited until she removed the iron chain and threw it aside before I followed her into the rooftop. The cool evening breeze in early summer was particularly comfortable on my body. Chenrong looked in a good mood and unusually excited. She urged me to pour out the snacks bought from the school supermarket, and then couldn't wait to pull out the wine cork. Pour the dark brown liquid into 2 disposable paper cups. "Cheers!" Chenrong shouted, and ignored me, and drank the wine in the paper cup. At first, I judged from the expression on her face that the taste of the wine might not be very good. I was still thinking, what if she didn't want to drink it? Fortunately, things went more smoothly than I expected. That night, Chenrong talked to me a lot. She said that her parents had lost their feelings for each other a long time ago, but they still pretended to be in love in front of her, which made her feel sick. There was a younger brother who was 10 years younger than her at home. He was the apple of the family's eye, and no one cared about her at all. She finally survived the 3 years of high school, and after the college entrance examination, she was going to go on a graduation trip to the south, and asked me if I wanted to go with her. Chenrong's cheeks flushed, and she held my hand and apologized to me with intoxicated eyes. She said that she shouldn't have said bad things about me behind my back before, and said incoherently that I was her best friend. I was calm inside, just thinking that she must have drunk too much, and in fact, Chenrong was really drunk. She staggered and fell down uncontrollably. I helped her stand in front of the half-person high railing to blow the wind. When the rusty railing broke, Chenrong's body lost balance. In panic, she reached out to me, but I just pushed lightly, and Chenrong's figure disappeared at the edge of the rooftop, and the dull sound of heavy objects falling to the ground was heard. After a short silence, there was a commotion downstairs. I took a big gulp of wine for myself, then closed my eyes and collapsed in front of the railing of the rooftop, half of my body exposed. When I heard noisy footsteps in my ears, I reluctantly opened my eyes. The pale face of the head of the grade appeared in front of me, like a dead person. When Chenrong's parents rushed to the school, I knelt in front of them and said in tears that it was all my fault. It was all my fault that I killed Chenrong. I shouldn't have agreed to let Chenrong go to the rooftop to drink. If I could stop her at that time, nothing would have happened. Mother Chen wanted to rush towards me like crazy and yelled at me to return her daughter. The police at the scene held her firmly and signaled her to calm down first. The police retrieved the surveillance footage at the staircase. The surveillance footage showed that it was Chenrong who forcibly dragged me to the rooftop. The student who helped Chenrong bring the wine in said that Chenrong took the initiative to ask him to help buy the wine. The broken railings on the rooftop did not show any signs of human damage, and there was no sign of fighting on Chenrong's body. It can be said that the main reason for this tragedy was that Chen violated school rules and regulations and went to the rooftop to drink privately. The main reason was that the railings on the rooftop had been in disrepair for a long time and the school was improperly managed. Faced with the clear investigation results, Chen parents did not bother me again. I heard that in order to take into account the impact, the school also paid a large sum of money to Chen parents. After the college entrance examination, I went back to school to get my diploma, and I quit all the class groups when I got home. I remembered that Chen said on the rooftop that day that she wanted to go on a graduation trip after the college entrance examination. Unfortunately, I don't know which city she wants to go to, so I have to wait until I get into college and then slowly help her fulfill this wish. I hope she can rest in peace and don't blame me. Of course, if she can't rest in peace, I can't do anything about it. The night I checked my results was probably the most stressful day of my life. When the webpage finally refreshed, I couldn't help crying with joy when I looked at my results. You know, it was very stressful to see my good friend fall to his death. But for some reason, my mother didn't seem so happy after learning about my college entrance examination results. She also advised me not to apply for a very good school. Just an ordinary one would be fine. I told her that I wanted to apply for a medical university and study medicine in the future. Unexpectedly, my mother's emotions suddenly became very excited. She told me clearly that I was absolutely not allowed to apply for a medical major. When my mother said this, her expression was so serious that it even scared me. Mom didn't mean anything else, but studying medicine was too tiring, and she didn't want to see you so hard. My mother's expression relaxed, gently stroked my hair and said, "Listen to me, and apply for another major." At that time, my mother's health was already very bad, and the whole person looked very weak. No matter how much medicine she took, it was useless. I didn't want to make my mother angry, so I had to choose finance. I heard that it is easier to make money after graduation from this major. After entering university, I felt a little more relaxed. My dormitory relationship is very harmonious, and the academic pressure is not as great as in high school. Although my grades are not in the top few in my major, as long as I can attend classes on time, at least I will not fail. I enjoy a busy and fulfilling college life and feel very happy. But in the past 2 years, I don't know if it is my illusion. Every time I go home during the holidays, I always feel that my mother is deliberately alienating me. And her health is getting worse, but she stubbornly refuses to be hospitalized. In the winter of her sophomore year, she suddenly fainted at home and was sent to the intensive care unit that night. The doctor told me that my mother's organs were seriously failing due to overwork, so I should be mentally prepared. I stayed in front of the bed, looking at the extremely old face, and my heart ached. My mother is only in her 40s this year, and her hair is gray and wrinkled, like an old lady. In the second half of the night, my mother barely opened her eyes through the breathing mask and tilted her head to look at me. Her lips were murmured, as if she had something to say. I quickly clenched her hand and put it close to her ear, trying to hear what she was going to say. But her chapped lips just moved, and she didn't say a word. Soon she took her last breath, and a line of tears slid down her eyes. I was extremely sad and threw myself on my mother, crying heartbreakingly. I suppressed my grief and handled my mother's funeral. Over the years, my mother has been my biggest support. Now that my mother is gone, I am left alone. Returning to the empty house, looking at the medicine bottles everywhere in the house, I couldn't help crying again. I sorted out the items left by my mother, packed them into boxes, and put them in her bedroom. In fact, I have considered selling this house, plus the money my mother left me. It is enough for me to move to another city and start over. But in the end, I still couldn't make up my mind. There are still traces of my mother here, and I can't bear to throw it away. When I gradually accepted the fact that my mother had passed away, I thought a lot. For example, whether to drop out of school and go back to take the college entrance examination again. I think it would be easier for me to use my abilities by becoming a doctor or a policeman. But after some thought, I still didn't choose to do so. First, I almost forgot the original high school knowledge. Second, if I drop out of school and go back to high school in my current situation, it will definitely be very conspicuous. If I use my abilities at this time, the risk is too great. Besides, I don't want to go against my mother's will, so I decided to change my direction and take the master's degree in law from finance. In this way, if the matter is exposed in the future, I can also protect my rights. I spent a whole year and finally locked in a candidate. Her name is Lu Chanqian, a high school classmate of my other roommate, and now she is studying law in the school next to us. For this reason, I specially applied for a small account and pretended to be a junior to find her online, to ask for advice. I learned that she had no hope of being recommended for graduate school, so she could only work hard to prepare for the exam. At the same time, I tried my best to avoid any contact with her in real life. I completely separated myself from Lu Chanqian's life. In reality, she didn't even know me. For me, this is simply the most ideal state. One night in the bitterly cold December, a week before the postgraduate entrance examination, I was standing guard at the gate of the community wearing a black down jacket, a mask and sunglasses. As usual, Lu Chanqian usually studies until 11 o'clock in the evening and then returns to her rented single room outside the school. In order to save money, the community she rented was very old, and even several street lights were broken. I hid in the shadows on the side of the road and waited for about 10 minutes. I heard a hurried sound of footsteps, and the flash of the mobile phone was shaking in the dark, making the red down jacket on Lu Chanqian particularly conspicuous. After making sure that there was no one around, I clenched the hammer in my pocket and quickly followed Lu Chanqian. Before she could react, she groaned and fell to the ground. I first picked up her dropped mobile phone, turned off the flash, and continued to swing my arms to hit her head. After finishing my business, I deliberately messed up Lu Chanqian's pockets and school bag, and took away her mobile phone and tablet. Then I climbed over the wall from the back door of the community and left. I bypassed the main road and found a small internet cafe hidden in an alley, and walked straight in. The lights in the internet cafe were dim and the voices were noisy. No one noticed me, and the network administrator at the front desk didn't even bother to look up at me. I dodged and hid in the bathroom and locked the door. After all, this was my first time doing it myself, and it would be a lie to say that I wasn't nervous. I wiped the blood off my down jacket and the hammerhead with a wet wipe. I took off my coat, wrapped it up with various sundries, and threw it out through the bathroom window. I had prepared another set of clothes outside the bathroom window in advance, and after changing, I left the bathroom. When I walked to the door of the internet cafe, I deliberately took out a cigarette and put it in my mouth, lowered my head in a very natural posture, and put my hand to cover my face to light it. When I walked out of the surveillance range, I extinguished the cigarette butt and put the cigarette butt in my pocket. Then I went around to the back of the internet cafe and retrieved the black down jacket. I found a corner where no one was, smashed Lu Chanqian's mobile phone and tablet, and threw the parts everywhere. On the way back to school, I threw the hammer into the bushes. I stuffed the black down jacket into the green box for donating old clothes. After dealing with everything, I lay down on the bed in the dormitory, and my tense nerves relaxed, making me almost faint. When I woke up the next day, everything was calm and no one came to me. The only difference was that I had a lot of knowledge about the postgraduate entrance examination in my mind. It was not until the third day that my roommate, who was Lu Chanqian's high school classmate, learned that Lu Chanqian had an accident. She told us in panic that her high school classmate had been killed. It seems that a robber appeared near the school. It is said that the means are very cruel and the person has not been caught yet. She reminded us to pay attention to safety recently and not to return to the dormitory too late at night. I showed a very regretful and worried expression and nodded repeatedly. Later, I searched the internet for related reports, and basically there was no follow-up. It only said that the police are currently doing their best to solve the case. Please actively provide clues and take precautions. I temporarily put my mind at ease and began to prepare for the postgraduate entrance examination in a few days. Until I took the retest in April, Lu Chanqian's case had not been solved. Thanks to Lu Chanqian, although I stumbled a little during the interview, I still passed it smoothly. Looking at the name on the list of candidates for admission, I couldn't help but think of Lu Chanqian's face, with short black hair, delicate features, and a pair of glasses on her small nose. She looked very cute. It's just a pity that her life ended here. When the case was the hottest, a video circulated on the internet. In the video, Lu Chanqian's parents cried in front of the camera while holding the portrait. The comments below were all condemning and cursing the inhumane murderer, that is, me. But I personally don't care. If scolding me can make these people feel better, I don't mind sacrificing. At first, I was a little worried, fearing that the case would be too popular and expose my whereabouts that night. But later, it turned out that I thought too much. Only 4 or 5 days later, no one on the internet cared about this case anymore. The summer after I graduated from college, I visited several cities in the south as a way to give an explanation to Chenrong. After the start of the school year, the life of a graduate student is busier than I thought. Not only do I have to attend classes every day, but I also have to take time to intern at a law firm and come back to write reports. Since my undergraduate major is not law, I have to study for 3 years as a graduate student, which is almost torture for me. To be honest, it is too painful to memorize those legal provisions. I envy my mentor very much. His name is Zhou Yang. He is a professor in his 40s and a part-time director of the Law Society. He has published many heavyweight papers and knows all kinds of legal provisions by heart. I often think, if I can inherit Zhou Yang's knowledge, it would be great. In that case, my future study and life will definitely be much smoother. However, I am more troubled about which method to use to kill Zhou Yang. The method similar to Lu Chanqian will definitely not work. The reason why I was able to escape the police's pursuit by chance is to a certain extent because I am a complete stranger to Lu Chanqian, and the police can't investigate me. But Zhou Yang is different. Once he is killed, I will definitely be targeted, and I still have to find a way to disguise it as an accident. After a period of observation, I noticed that Zhou Yang suffered from high blood pressure and often attended some dinner parties. I conceived a very bold plan in my mind. Just as I was thinking about how to start, Zhou Yang actually took the initiative to provide me with an opportunity. One night, Zhou Yang called me to his office on the pretext of guiding the thesis. There were only 2 of us in the office. He was drunk, and his arm was intentionally or unintentionally on my shoulder. I couldn't help but sneer in my heart. I didn't expect that Zhou Yang looked serious at ordinary times, but he was like this behind the scenes. But it's good this way, saving me the trouble of getting close to him. After guiding the thesis, Zhou Yang took my hand and asked me if I was interested in continuing to study for a doctorate with him. He said that I have good qualifications and high talent, and I will definitely make a difference in the future. These words almost made me laugh, but I resisted the urge to laugh and expressed my interest. Zhou Yang was overjoyed and asked me to go to his house another day to have a deep chat, and I readily agreed. 3 days later, I came to Zhou Yang's house as promised. He was quite sentimental, arranged a table of Western food, and opened a bottle of red wine, which saved me a lot of trouble. During the meal, Zhou Yang kept complaining to me that his ex-wife didn't understand him and he had been divorced from his ex-wife for many years. I expressed my understanding and comforted him not to be too sad. He held my hand and vowed that he would never treat me badly. I smiled and kept pouring wine for him. Finally, while Zhou Yang got up to go to the bathroom, I poured the prepared drug powder into his wine glass. Seeing Zhou Yang raised his wine glass without noticing and drank it all, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. After the meal, Zhou Yang couldn't wait to get to the point. I told him not to worry and found an excuse to clean up the table to cover up the traces of my presence. After cleaning up, I immediately put on another face, pushed Zhou Yang away unceremoniously, and signaled him to be more respectful. Zhou Yang was stunned and looked at me in confusion. I completely removed my disguise, glanced at Zhou Yang with disdain, and deliberately said, "Why don't you look at yourself in the mirror? You are as fat as a pig, disgusting." Zhou Yang's face flushed with anger, and he glared at me fiercely. "How dare you talk to me like that?" I sneered, "Aren't you just an old man who is old and no one wants you? What's so great about that?" In Zhou Yang's astonished eyes, I slammed the door and left without looking back. At this time, the plan was only half completed. The most critical part was whether Zhou Yang would take blood pressure-lowering medicine after being angered by me. This was out of my control and I could only leave it to fate. If God didn't stand on my side, I might be sad in the days to come. I had to consider whether to take risks and take extreme measures. That night, I lay in bed tossing and turning and couldn't fall asleep. It wasn't until after 1 a.m. that countless miscellaneous knowledge flooded into my mind, which made me wake up instantly. It took me a whole night to digest all that knowledge. What surprised me was that in addition to professional knowledge, Zhou Yang also knew a lot of other miscellaneous things, which really opened my eyes. A few days later, our school announced Zhou Yang's obituary. I heard some gossip that Zhou Yang had a disulfiram reaction after taking drugs after drinking. He called an ambulance that night, but he still couldn't be rescued. At the same time, I also learned that Zhou Yang was not divorced at all, he was just separated from his wife for a long time. At the funeral, I met Zhou Yang's wife, and she didn't show any sadness. It felt like she was just completing a task. At the same time, many articles accusing him circulated on the internet. It was not the first time that Zhou Yang had deceived female students. But he had suppressed it by various means before, so I thought I did a good thing. With Zhou Yang's professional knowledge, I successfully passed the doctoral exam after graduating from my master's degree. I planned to stay at the school to teach after completing my doctoral studies. But I didn't expect that at this time, my health suddenly had problems. After studying for a doctorate, my physical condition became worse and worse, and I often felt abnormally tired. At first I thought I was just too tired, but I soon realized that things were not that simple. After a week of recuperation, my physical condition did not improve at all. I could clearly feel that I was becoming weaker and weaker. Every morning when I woke up and looked at the messy hair on my pillow, I felt a palpitation. I went to several hospitals for a full body checkup, but nothing was found. The doctor just suggested that I pay more attention to rest. But I knew in my heart that it was definitely not because of rest. Those doctors must not have told me the truth, and I had to find a way to save myself. At this moment, I couldn't care about so much, so when I got rid of the first doctor, I bought some medicine for myself according to the knowledge in my mind. But my condition did not improve at all, but became more and more serious. I began to lose a lot of hair, and the joints of my body seemed to be rusted. I had to stop and rest every few steps. I thought that the doctor was not good enough, so I set my sights on another old professor with superb medical skills. I took a lot of medicine and tried countless methods, but it didn't work. I could only watch myself gradually wither away, but I was powerless. Until another morning of collapse, when I numbly picked up the medicine bottle and prepared to take the medicine, the dusty memory surged up for no reason, making me stiff. My hands were shaking, and I was horrified to find out something. The medicines I was taking now seemed to be similar to the medicines my mother had been taking for years when she was alive. In an instant, I felt as if I was locked in a huge block of ice, losing all the temperature and strength to move. In order to confirm my doubts, I forced myself to cheer up and bought the earliest train to rush home. I haven't been home for a long time since I started my doctorate. I didn't care about the dust in the house, and I rushed straight into my mother's bedroom. For so many years, I haven't touched the things my mother left behind. I opened the storage box again, and there were still some medicines my mother had bought before. Although the packaging is not the same as it is now, I still recognized it at a glance. The medicines my mother took before were similar to what I am taking now. What is going on? For some reason, I recalled the appearance of my mother lying on the hospital bed before she died. I felt a chill running up my spine, and all kinds of scattered and trivial fragments rolled up a vortex, which made my mind fall into confusion. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door. I dragged my exhausted body to open the door and saw two men in police uniforms standing at the door. One of the policemen took out a pair of cold handcuffs and put them on my wrists. "We suspect you are the murderer of 2 murders, please cooperate with our investigation." At this moment, I was completely desperate and did not intend to resist. I was taken to the police car obediently. I knew I was about to die, and struggles and excuses were futile. During the investigation, I did not hide anything. I told everything about how I killed the two doctors. The motive I gave was that I was dissatisfied with the diagnosis results of the two doctors. But after recording the transcript, I asked the interrogator Lou to help me investigate one thing about my father's death. As far as I can remember, my father got drunk on the night when I was 5 years old and accidentally fell into the river and drowned on the way home. But now I think that my father's death is probably not an accident. Officer Lou looked like a good person, although he was confused by my request. Moreover, it had been more than 20 years since the accident, but he still agreed to help me check it out. More than a month later, Officer Lou found me and said that he had indeed found some things. He found several people who drank with my father that night. One of them recalled that my father did drink too much that night. They wanted to call a taxi for my father, but my father thought it was too expensive and said that someone would come to pick him up. The person my father mentioned should be my mother. But after the accident, my mother said that she had something urgent to do that night and did not pick up my father. My father came back by himself. Now there is no way to verify these details. However, Officer Lou also told me another piece of news. My mother seemed to have proposed to divorce my father many times because my father was domestic violence. This matter once caused a sensation in my father's unit, but I was too young at that time and had no impression of it at all. Officer Lou said that this was all he could find out. Finally, he asked me why I specifically asked him to investigate this accident. Did I suspect that my mother killed my father and disguised it as an accident? I pursed my lips and did not answer this question. On the eve of the trial, I was rushed to a provincial hospital for treatment due to multiple organ failure. Lying on the hospital bed, I clearly knew that I didn't have much time left. At the same time, I also roughly understood the price of using that ability. If my guess is correct, when using that ability to inherit the other party's knowledge, the time it took for the other party to master this knowledge was also added to me. For example, the knowledge I mastered after killing my grandmother, such as cooking, sewing clothes, and farming, may only be converted into a few years, while the knowledge mastered by my junior high school classmate in Shenrong, converted into time, is 3 years and 6 years. Liu Qianqian, who came later, was 10 years, and Zhou Yang, perhaps 20 years. The time spent by the last two doctors may reach 30 years or even more. In other words, my 27-year-old body has endured nearly 100 years, which led to such severe organ failure. As for my mother, she should have encountered a similar situation as me. My father used to be a high school teacher, and the knowledge he mastered is estimated to be converted into time of 20 to 30 years. Looking back now, many things that I felt strange in the past have been answered at this moment. Perhaps after learning about my college entrance examination results, my mother guessed what I had done. That's why she strongly opposed my medical studies, and that's why she deliberately distanced herself from me. Recently, I often wonder what she wanted to say to me before she died. Did she want to remind me not to use that ability again? But what kind of mood should she have when she spoke? Should she tell her daughter that her beloved mother was the murderer who killed her father with her own hands? I tried to imagine my mother's mood at that time, regretful, worried, desperate, but powerless. In the end, my mother paid her price, and now it's my turn. At this point, I don't feel guilty for what I did, nor do I feel that I did anything wrong. People are selfish, and I just want to fight for a better life for myself. In this world, every moment, there are countless people doing the same thing as me. They either rely on money or power to deprive others of their lives in order to make themselves live better. In my opinion, there is no such thing as good or bad people in this world. Humans have always been such ugly and evil creatures. Everyone is destined to pay the price, it's just a matter of time. In a trance, the door of the intensive care unit seemed to be opened. I struggled to open my eyes and saw a woman who looked like a nurse holding a little boy's hand and standing in front of my bed. I don't know how she got in, nor do I know what she is going to do. The nurse took off her mask, revealing a delicate and beautiful face. She said her name was Qin Anren, and she came from an organization called Brave New World. Every member of the organization has a unique special ability. They want to create a new world without disputes and sins. I heard the woman say, "Your ability is very important to us, but it's a pity that you are not perfect enough." Sheen Amran pushed the little boy in front of me. "This child's ability is very similar to yours. Every time he kills someone, he can gain the other person's ability." Sheen Amran smiled and squinted. "Isn't it amazing?" But then she pouted unsatisfactorily, "But it's a pity that he can only have 2 abilities." "But it is enough. This child already has the ability of immortality. With your ability, he will soon become a god." I tried to turn my stiff neck to look at the little boy. He has a face with regular features, double eyelids, and thick eyelashes, and his tender pupils are as shiny as obsidian, which makes people stare at him. Sheen Amran gently pushed the little boy. I watched him walk to a machine next to the bed. After operating it a few times, my pupils suddenly contracted and I began to feel difficulty breathing. I tried my best to open my eyes and remember the face of this little boy. If possible, I really want to see what this God who is about to bear everything will turn this terrible world into. The second before my consciousness dissipated, the little boy walked in front of me and closed my eyes for me. I thought to myself, what a gentle and pitiful boy. The end.